introduce Rafael Prado. He's a 3L. He's one of the people who might be coming in late. He's a current student, a 3L, and he is getting his second COVID vaccine. He's someone who has been very involved in the FIU law community and just want to hear from a current student's perspective about what what it means to kind of choose your own path and find your own confidence in being a law student and future lawyer. And so now I'll introduce Tremaine Hemans. She's a recent FIU law alumni, and she is working as an immigration law attorney. And I met her when I was like a first 1L student, and she was a huge inspiration for me. And I know a lot of people have been really inspired by her. So I was really excited to invite her to speak on our panel because I know she's just such an inspirational speaker. And again, recent FIU law alumni. And then Charlene, did I say that again one more time?
You said it right, Charlene.
Charlene Stanbury. She is, and you graduated in 2013, correct?
I'm old. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and she is located out of DC, and I will let you explain a little bit more about what you're doing, because even I don't want to say something incorrect. So why don't you explain what you're doing in DC?
I work on Capitol Hill as Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, who represents Brooklyn, New York.
Thank you so much. And then Professor Fairlie, hopefully some of the students know Professor Fairlie and have taken some of her classes. She teaches criminal law, professional responsibility, and I believe some other classes like international criminal law, some seminars here and there. Professor Fairlie, if you want to say anything else.
Just thank you, Stephanie, for hosting this event. And criminal procedure is the other class. So if I haven't had you yet and you haven't taken it, you should know that it is probably, as in definitely, the most interesting class in law school. So, make a note as you're making your decisions for the fall semester. And sure, Charlene, I'm here for you because you're not old, because I'm on the panel. So don't worry about it. I'll take that spot because I was already teaching at FIU for almost 6 years when you graduated. So I'm delighted to see 2 of our alums come back and talk to our students. I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and we intentionally wanted a very diverse, group, different perspectives, because that's what's going to really enrich this kinds of conversation. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Sarah Valdez with LexisNexis. She's going to do a quick little presentation with Lexis. Oh, do I need to give you host?
Yes, could you give me the ability to share screen? I'll go ahead and introduce myself. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah Valdez. I am the dedicated LexisNexis rep for FIU. I am also a proud FIU law grad, so it was not too long ago that I was in Professor Fairlie's class learning about Crim Pro and the ABBA Gold CD and Three's Company. And if you've changed those hypotheticals, I don't know, but I remember them very dearly. So I encourage you to take those courses because you can see that the examples resonate with you years out. Prior to working for Lexis, I litigated cases in South Florida, first as a child welfare attorney and then later as a maritime defense attorney. I'm thankful that Stephanie asked me to come to this panel, short little presentation for Lexis, but I'm also so proud to see these panels. As a grad, I think I love to see these topics being explored. You hear a little bit about my background. I started off in the child welfare system. Now I'm here with you all talking about legal research. Sometimes our journeys are not linear, and that's great. And that doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start sharing screen, give a couple of quick announcements regarding Lexis at FIU. If you've hopped on the call after we've started, there is a sign-in sheet because there is going to be a raffle. I'll go ahead and contact the winner after the panel because I don't want to take up any more of your meeting time. But just a couple of quick announcements. You will all receive an email from me today regarding a Lexpo that is going to happen this Thursday. So we are hosting from 12 to 2 p.m. on Thursday, 12 different tips. So under a different set of circumstances, we'd be at FIU over in the student lounge at a table. You guys could stop by, but we know that things are a little different this semester and we don't want you guys to feel like you constantly have to be going on Zoom links. So just join us. You can pop in at any time between 12 to 2. We're going to raffle off some gift cards and offer you some great insight when you're so start thinking about your summer experience, thinking about the different options that you have. Along those lines, I want to make everybody aware we do have any training recordings. I think I've got someone else on the call. Your appellate brief training recording is up on the law school portal. Don't forget that. If you have not yet been certified for the semester for Prepare to Practice, I highly encourage you to do so. I've hyperlinked all of that in your law school portal, so no need to go into different websites. If you're thinking about IP, you're thinking about bankruptcy, there's very specific niche areas that you're getting ready to explore. You guys know, if you've been to one of my trainings, I'm a first generation lawyer. I didn't know what any of this was. So if you want to get your feet wet in those different areas of the law, we do have those area specific trainings for you to attend. You then have the option to connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll endorse you for research in that specific area. So be aware of that. And I will leave you with one tool today. We're going to go into Lexis Plus and go into our law school practice pages to ensure that you have those tools ready while you're supplementing your outline. So we're in March. Some of you will have your outlines prepared. Some of you are still wondering, what is an outline and what should I do with this? And regardless of where you are in your study process, you're going to go to practice areas on the legal research page. Lexis looks a little different than we were in law school. That's for the other alum on the page. You're going to go to view our practice centers. And you're going to see a list of some of the common law school subjects. If there's something that you don't see here that you wish we had, let me know. I welcome that feedback. And you're going to see different practice areas. So for example, let's say that you are taking evidence with Professor Wasserman or Professor Moreno, and you want a little bit more help, right? You want a little bit to supplement your outline. You're going to be taken to this page. We offer the free Barbary outlines on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you're going to see some of those key secondary sources, again, to help you study throughout the whole semester, to help you supplement your outline. On the left, you're going to see some key topics related to particular areas of the law related to evidence. And if you keep on scrolling down, you're going to see some of that key case law related to that particular topic, as well as some of those case briefs. So again, this should be used as a tool to supplement your studies. So that's all I have for you all today. I appreciate you all sharing some time out of your meeting. I wish that I could stay for the entire panel because it sounds like you guys have some excellent panelists lined up. Students, if you have not already signed that sign-in sheet for the raffle, I encourage you to do so. Stephanie, I'm going to go ahead and reach out to the winner individually so don't take up any more of your time. I appreciate you sharing some time during this meeting and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Sarah. All right. So hopefully we're still waiting on Raphael. Maybe he's getting his COVID vaccine. We definitely want him to do that. So, but we'll just go ahead and kick off the panel just by kind of asking the question. So the theme for this panel was kind of finding your own path and helping students kind of find the confidence that what they want to do, where they want to go is the right path for them. Oftentimes there can be like a feeling in law school where you kind of have to be shaped a certain way. And I think, at least from my perspective, that can be, to pass the bar. You have to, for certain classes, you have to know this certain material and, this kinds of material to pass the bar. So sometimes it can kind of feel like we're shaping you to be a certain way. And we want to kind of break out of that and encourage students to feel confident. So I guess my first question to the panelists to start things off is, what do you recommend to students to help them ground themselves if there's anything that's making them feel uncertain about where they are in law school or just about being a lawyer in general? and I'll let you volunteer to go first. I don't want to pick anyone, so if anyone wants to volunteer to go first, can go.
Charlotte? Okay, I'll go.
I'll go after you.
Okay, lovely to see you, by the way.
I know, my Tremaine.
Right. So for me, this is something I preach to every law student that comes in contact with me. I really believe that what you're talking about has a name. It's called imposter syndrome. And we all feel it. You know what I mean? We all feel like on some level, we're either undeserving of where we are, or the pressure of everything you're dealing with kind of imposes that imposter syndrome on you, if you know what I mean. So I think for me, I always recommend that you manifest what it is that you do want, and not focus so much on whether your mind is telling you that you don't believe that you're supposed to be where you are. That's one. And also to remember where you came from. You know what I mean? You are the only person. You had to pass the LSAT. You had to get the good grades in undergrad. Your seat is yours. You earned your seat in law school. And regardless of what it may seem around you, you have to focus on what you have to do to go forward, and not so much on looking at what everybody else is doing. So stay focused. That's my advice to you.
Thank you.
I love what Tremaine just said. I definitely was going to say imposter syndrome. But also adding to what she said, I would say also this spirit of comparison, which you're going to get a lot when you're in law school, right? You're going to get like, hey, I got this grade in this class, so I think I'm going to be going out for X, Y, and Z law firm, or X, Y, and Z externship. And one thing that I would say, when Tremaine talked about being grounded, one thing I think that helped ground me is when I came into law school, I knew that I didn't necessarily want to practice. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy, like a chicken, like an alien, right? And I knew that I wanted to go into public policy. And I knew that a lot of people that were already in public policy and who already were elected officials had law degrees. So I kind of had a path charted there in my mind. And then also think about what interests you. What interests me was healthcare at the time. So that is how I was able to kind of stay grounded and not have imposter syndrome and not get fed into the spirit of comparison with everyone else, because I knew I had in my mind, I was still open to other things, don't get me wrong, but I knew I had in my mind, I wanted to do policy and I wanted to focus on healthcare. And no matter what other people were doing or what they were saying to me, that was going to be my interest. So think about being grounded, like Tremaine said, but also what interests you and what fuels you.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, I think that's why I was able to develop such a strong opinion of what it is I wanted to do and why I was in law school, because I knew immediately that I wanted to be an immigration judge. Yes, well, yeah, in the future. I knew that immigration law was my only concern. That's what I'm obsessed with. That's my passion. So I am just there to get the piece of paper to allow me to do what I love. That's literally how I looked at it. That's how I expressed it to everyone who would listen. I didn't care how good I was at trial ad or anything else. That's what I wanted to do. So if you feel strongly about a certain part of the law or what you're trying to do with your law degree, then definitely, as Charlene said, focus on that. You know what I mean? And if you don't happen to have that yet, just try to focus on what I told you. Remember why you're there and what it took for you to get there. If that's the only thing you have to hold on to for a while, hold on to that.
Stephanie, I thought these were such good questions that you had us think about in advance. I found them really provocative. And it took me back to being a 1L and having a conversation with some of my classmates where they all were saying they knew exactly what area of law they were going to practice. And I was probably, this is maybe an exaggeration, but I think I was infused with terror, because I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do when I graduate. Like Sarah, how amazing, another former student I didn't realize had joined us earlier. I had her in Crim Pro. I also was first generation for my family. I was kind of a mouthy kid, and everyone always said, you ought to be a lawyer. And so I think like, okay, that's partly how I ended up being in law school. And I had an English degree, which was really wonderful, but what do you do with an English degree? And I had no clue. I mean, I was the person who opened up the torts textbook the day before torts and was stunned to see that it didn't say torts are, and I had to go and look in the dictionary to see what a tort was. And so when my classmates were saying what kind of law they wanted to practice, I went to school in Virginia with a lot of second and third and fourth generation lawyers. I was like, and I said out loud, I go, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to practice. And everyone looked at me kind of in shock. And I was like, but I think I won't ever be sorry that I got this degree. And that ended up being 100% true. I don't practice anymore, but I still very much am a lawyer. And I have had a total non-linear path, and I have loved almost everything that I've done. And Stephanie knows that I didn't like my law firm experience. We can talk about that a little bit later. So I think what I would want to say to you is, don't be overwhelmed if you don't know what you want to do. Because I mean, I can't remember who the other folks were who were a part of that conversation, but I don't know if they all went and followed their, the paths that they said that they were going to. And I've been incredibly happy. So take a deep breath. If you don't know what you want to do, take everything that seems of interest to you, formulate genuine relationships, and tell yourself, I'm not going to be sorry at the end of the day, no matter where this leads me, because it's always great to have this as part of your foundation.
Thank you. Thank you for that first round of explanations. I do kind of want to open it up to any of the students, kind of start developing just an organic conversation. If you have any questions for them, I already have some questions, but I don't want to take any space from any of the other students if you have questions to ask them. So I'll start with my first question that I just have sitting in my head. Charlene, you said that, or when you said that you knew that you didn't want to practice, and Professor Fairlie immediately kind of shook her head kind of in agreement, yeah, not everyone has to practice, and there's still, and Professor Fairlie said, I still feel so much like a lawyer, even though you're not practicing right now. How do you see the value in your JD and still feel very much like a lawyer, even though you're not doing traditional, you're not a traditional attorney litigator, I guess?
Oh, that's a great question, because it's something that I've kind of, I won't say struggled with, but teetered with even before I left Miami for Washington, D.C. Luckily, I'm in an environment where every other person or every other third person has a law degree and they're not practicing, just being completely honest. So, I mean, I think I was able to go to an environment that kind of felt or filled the niche that I was looking for. There's a lot of attorneys who work at think tanks, who work on Capitol Hill, a lot of attorneys in administration that have never worked at a law firm a day in their life, and they still have counsel as a title. They still have Esquire behind their name. I think what I tend to do to feel like I'm still a part of the legal community, even though I'm in a part of a professional community where some people may or may not have law degrees who work on Capitol Hill, is that I still stay involved with my local bar associations. So I think that kind of helps with staying within the legal community network that I have. So I'm involved in the equivalent of fall in DC. And then also I'm a part of Washington Bar Association, which is the equivalent of Wilkie Ferguson. And then we have GWAC, which is the equivalent of Gwyneth Cherry. So I think being involved and being around lawyers who just do different things still help boost me up and boost that confidence I have as being a lawyer that's not practicing.
Thank you. Professor Fairlie, do you want to add anything to that? I know.
See, I'm trying to be courteous and have my mic off when it's not my turn. Well, you know, I think what I would say is just like you need to be, or it's helpful to be open to any path when you're in law school. I think it's also helpful to have that attitude when you're out and you're practicing, because otherwise you might look past really interesting opportunities. Not unlike you, Charlene, after I prosecuted for a number of years, I had a friend or had friends who worked in the Senate in New York State. And I had an opportunity to go there and work a lot less for more money to be counsel to a senator, where obviously I wasn't practicing law, but I needed all of the skills that I had acquired in law school, you know, among other things, you know, drafting legislation. I can remember one time the senator who I worked for was really anti-direct to consumer advertising for pharmaceuticals. This was a new, that's how old I am, right? Because you guys grew up like watching all of those commercials, but they used to be forbidden. And I remember being called into his office, there were a bunch of us, and he was like, I hate these advertisements. And, you know, I want you to do this, this, and this. And he was like, and you, me, I want you to figure out a way that I can stop this direct to consumer advertising in New York State. And I was like, well, the First Amendment, the FDA. He was like, yeah, your job is going to be harder than everyone else's job, but you go figure this out, right? So you take these skills and you put them into law-related fields. You know, you're still using them. I eventually left the Senate, and then I was in the Assembly, the person who kind of, you know, whispered in the ear of the folks who were answering the questions on the floor or asking the questions on the floor. There are so many things you can do with your law degree that I would encourage you to be open to doing, especially if you're either not happy, especially if you're not happy doing what it is you are doing when you graduate, because you only go around once, and you have to make the best of that opportunity. So don't turn your nose up at law related and think you must be a litigator or you must be actively practicing.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? I still have more. Don't you guys worry. I can still generate a lot more questions, but I do want to allow any of the other students to ask you questions. You are free to use the chat box as well. Carla?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I had a question relating to mindfulness, as we are in a mindfulness related presentation. So I just was curious to know how each of you incorporate mindfulness into a work routine. So I feel like law school, you work through maybe your own routine, but how has that changed since you started working? Or maybe how have you incorporated the same practices in the work field as well?
That's an excellent question, Carla.
Anyone who wants to take that question?
I'll jump in. So I just got out of being a first year associate. So I think for me, I think I can jump in here to explain that transition, because when you're in law school, there is no break time. The break time you have is between classes to shovel some food in your mouth or run the tropical smoothie or try to get some sunlight outside of the building, like actual sun, not our beautiful windows, and then run back to class, you know what I mean? So going from like 12 hours straight of studying, like in class, out of class, going to the library, prepping for the next class and everything. Your day tends to like just be surrounded and encompassed by law school and law and everything about it. So I think for me, the biggest transition was striking a balance. I don't know if it's because I was an older law student. Like I tend to not follow what everyone tells me because everybody tells you, oh no, your first year of practice, you're going to be, you know, working even more than you were in law school. And I was not having that. I am a married woman. I have a house to maintain. I wanted to come home and sit and actually have a meal that doesn't involve school with my husband. I wanted to see my friends again on the weekends. So for me, I really made a point to schedule things in. Like I have date nights scheduled in my schedule like I'm an 80-year-old woman with my husband, but I have to just to make sure I force myself to strike a balance. If my coworkers or my boss or anyone messages me after 8 p.m., you are not getting a response until I get back to the office. Um, in my kind of practice, I can do that. I don't do litigation, so I can do that. So that was very important for me. When I get my lunch breaks at work, my door is closed if I'm in my office or I am out of the office. I do not allow any kind of work. You have to find that time to take for yourself when you're in practice. Now, when I was in law school, what I did was, and I still do that to this day, the second I'm out of class and I'm going to eat some lunch, I call my husband and we sit and talk about stupid stuff, whatever meme is, you know, popular that day or something, anything but school or anything but work. So I still maintain that to this day. So whoever brings you peace, because I keep mentioning the little man that I have at my house, whoever brings you peace, lean into that person. Whoever makes you laugh and makes your day go by a little faster, I'd suggest carving out some time each day to talk to that person and not one of your new friends from law school. You know what I mean? It's inevitably going to go back to talking about law school. So those connections that you had before law school, lean into those. And that's going to help you to strike a balance to make sure you're maintaining your mental health outside of school. Because if your entire life becomes law school, you're going to burn out 100%.
That's really great advice. Thank you. Anyone else, Professor Fairlie?
Professor Fairlie?
You first, please, Charlotte.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm going to add on to what they say. I'm in an environment where I'm on call 24/7. And I'm so thankful, Stephanie, that you're having this panel because it's helping me in my professional life. So I literally just a couple hours ago told my boss that I'm transitioning to another job. And thank you. So I'm gonna be going into government relations, which is why I wanted to, go to law school to do public policy. And now I'm gonna be on the lobbying arm, lobbying for broadcasters. I think part of it was mindfulness, Carla, to be honest with you. I wasn't getting the full mind, body, and soul experience being on call 24/7. Yeah, it worked for a couple of years. It worked for 5 years, but now I'm getting a little bit older. I know I want to settle down and get married and have kids. I want to travel more. And those are just things that you have to come into consideration. So even though right now I'm in this 24-hour access environment, which kind of is similar to law school, it's little things I may do. I'll wake up, I'm a spiritual person. I may listen to a sermon from Joyce Meyer or T.D. Jakes. That's what gives me peace, like Tremaine said. At nighttime, I shut off after a certain time and I light my candle and I may put on the same soft music that y'all use to study and to study for the bar. I may put that on just to clear my mind. Just like Tremaine mentioned before, sometimes I just call my mom because I don't have to talk about politics. I don't have to talk about the law to her. And you spend so much time at your job that you kind of forget about those loved ones and to start loving on them. So you want to have that right balance. So even if it's me talking about silly stuff, at least that's my personal time and words of affirmation and different love language that I have for my mom and for creating that balance to make me a whole person. And the other thing that I would say is also watch, you're in an environment like Tremaine said, where you're with law students, right? And you're about to be in an environment where you're with lawyers, and they're just going to be talking about law, and all of this. Every coworker that you have is not your friend. Every person that you're around is not your friend. So think about those friends and those key people that keep you grounded and keep that foundation, that give you peace, that give you unconditional love, since this is a conditional environment, if you think about it. And then have that as your key foundation to give you that balance of mindfulness.
I think those are great contributions, and I probably have been talking too much, so I'm going to say very quickly, if we're talking about mindfulness proper, I try to do Headspace every day with my children. I don't incorporate it. You know, Tara is one of my seminar students this semester, and I know at the start of the semester I was like, ooh, during the break in the seminar, I'm going to see, does anyone want to do like a 3-minute meditation or something? And I have totally dropped the ball on that, and I wish I hadn't. But I do Headspace almost every day with my children. And if you have a hard time kind of breaking into Headspace, try the Netflix version first, because it's quite engaging. And then you can do, if you don't know, you can do it for free as FIU students. So there's free mindfulness meditation for you, as much as you can, you know, as much as you can absorb, or as much time as you can dedicate to it. But both Tremaine and Charlene have said really important things, I think, when you're talking about overall happiness and well-being, and that is number one, making sure you have some type of work-life balance. It's absolutely critical, and it's where lawyers tend to drop the ball. And formulate genuine relationships and sustain the relationships that you have, because life is hard. And I'm not just talking about work. And you know, there can be some pretty ugly surprises out there for you sometimes. And you know, a problem shared is a problem halved. And if you have true and genuine relationships, you don't have to carry those burdens entirely upon yourself. So don't feel, you know, right now you probably feel guilty when you take the time to call your mom, or talk to your best friend from high school, or you know, go and visit someone from college. But know that actually those are gifts to your future self, and to the people who are important to you. Because for you to stay mentally well and physically healthy, you need to have that type of support. So if you can't prioritize yourself, then be mindful of the fact that taking care of yourself positions you to take care of the other people who need you.
Wow, that was some great advice. I'm so glad that this is being recorded. So we can just continue to share everything that's been said here. Are there any other questions that anyone wants to ask these really wonderful panelists who have just been spewing such great advice? Just continue to pick their brains and how you can continue to be a really successful and competent law student.
I had a question, but we haven't touched on it, so it's a new topic, I guess. I don't know if anybody on this panel has relocated. I'm thinking of relocating to Orlando, where I'm originally from, and I'm super nervous about that. I'm like, I haven't made those connections that you would make networking where you go to law school for. So I was wondering if anybody had any advice.
Just to piggyback on that, just because it was mentioned how the relationships, I can't remember who said this, but someone was mentioning how having really rich relationships just enriches not only your law school, but, you know, being a lawyer. So I think, you know, that's kind of what I hear from Rotse's question is how do we continue to enrich and network and develop those relationships post law school too.
I'll start since I relocated to a whole nother state, and I literally had lived in Florida my entire adult life. Like, I'm from Jacksonville. I went to UCF for undergrad. So I lived in Orlando. Then I worked in Tampa, got rid of my ex-boyfriend came to law school in Miami at FIU. And then I was like, what's next? Where do I go? And yeah, I was scared. I'll be honest with you, I was scared a little bit, but that's the gift that FIU law gives you. FIU law produces law students and who end up being lawyers who are so professional, who are awesome when it comes to networking, but also awesome with figuring out what resources are out there. So I already had in my head, let me research what the equivalent of fall was. Let me research what Wilkie Ferguson's equivalent in DC is. And let me just send an email and just say, hey, I'm new to this area. I would like to become a member. If they already had a membership application, I would go ahead and fill it out. And then I just started going to some of their networking events. You have to you overcome this fear of putting yourself out there. But the best thing about it is you have a clean slate because you're going to an environment where nobody knows you. So anything that came up while you were in law school, like they're not going to know. But the other thing I will add too is look at the organizations that you may be a part of now and who's from Orlando or who knows somebody that can put you in touch with a master networker. I'll never forget, moving to Miami was a culture shock for me. You can hear my accent, like I'm a strictly North Florida girl. And I had a sorority sister who's like, hey, I'm gonna put you in touch with this attorney. His name's Todd Michaels. He knows everybody. He's in Wilkie, he's in criminal defense, he knows X, Y, and Z. And so as soon as I moved down to Miami, I was able to meet up with him and go to different events. And then you just start, it's this circle where you meet other people. So don't be scared. That's all I'm gonna say.
All I'm gonna say, Ms. Rhodes, is you know better, honey. If we have taught you nothing else in Balsa, it's how to network. There is no need to be scared. I got you, you know.
Very
Oh,
true.
and Balsa, let me tell you, use Balsa because Tremaine knows I'm a Balsa girl. You saw my face lit up when she said that.
Yes.
My friends in Balsa and my first roommates in DC were people I was on a national board of Balsa with. My friends now were former national chairs of Balsa, former regional chairs, people I met along the way. So that's a network in itself.
Yep.
Think about that, especially in Orlando. And you brought up Orlando. My best friend works at UCF. She used to work at Berry Law, and she used to be president of the local bar association there.
There you go.
So I'll put my email in the chat box for you.
I also went to UCF. Go Knights.
Go Knights.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before I ask my question? Because I have one. Thank you. So I have a question. One of the things that we kind of touched on at the beginning of this panel was Tremaine said, or both Charlene and Tremaine said that you knew kind of what you wanted to do going into law school, but Professor Fairlie, you said that you didn't. And so what advice can you give to those students who are still trying to develop their own meaning and purpose with getting their JD? Yeah, that's my question.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in hearing about, not your students anymore, but your alums, so the perspective of our former students. But I would say, from my own experience, is to be open to different possibilities and look at the course offerings and choose the ones that you find most interesting rather than the ones that will give you a schedule where you'll be on campus the least amount of time, right? Like, I know, I'm sorry, that sounds very, this is your mother speaking, but I think you're losing out if you're saying like, oh, I only want to be on campus Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday. Embrace the inconvenience for exposure to other areas of law. I graduated, I felt compelled, if you've taken PR with me, you've heard this story, but I felt compelled to have a job when I graduated. And so for me, I was moving to North Carolina. That was only with a law firm. That was my only option. And I was profoundly unhappy with that experience. And so I was at the law firm for 9 months because it took me 8 months to find another job. So those, within 1 month, I started working on my resume and thinking like, this is not for me. And I think that required a little reflection. And looking back at my law school transcript and seeing that I had taken every single possible criminal related offering. What does that tell you, Megan? Well, actually, I guess that tells me I really was interested in criminal law. And, you know, that led to me being a prosecutor, which was maybe a not very affluent person, but a happy one, and a very happy lawyer who was mindful all the time when she practiced, because you're in the courtroom, you can't be thinking about anything else but what's happening in the moment. And it's super rewarding. So I would say, if you don't know, be open to all different possibilities, explore the things that seem interesting to you, even if they seem inconvenient, because you'll never have the opportunity to expose yourself to so many areas of law as you do right now.
I think that's great. Thank you. Any of the other panelists want to tackle that question?
I think the professor was perfect.
Thank you. I thought she was great too. I also agree with her. I kind of have that mentality. I have taken classes just kind of knowing that I probably won't like them, but that it would be beneficial for me to take them. So I echo her sentiments as well. Any other questions for our panelists, for anyone? And it can be about anything. We've had really great questions, not, you know, strictly related to the topic that we had for finding yourself. We've had really great questions about mindfulness practices. I'll just leave one last question then and we'll wrap up. What do you want to leave this group of students and then the rest of the Mindfulness Association that we'll hear on our Instagram page? What message would you like to leave them that you hope at the FIU law community, like not just the material that you have to know for the bar, but what do you hope that the FIU law community teaches FIU law students that's not that's not strictly bar tested? What could you hope for the future of FIU law students?
I spoke last, I think, so I really feel like it should be Charlene or Tremaine. I don't want to be the mic hog here.
Tremaine, you want to go?
Sure. Okay. So what I want to leave with you guys is that finding yourself there is no time period for you to do that. There is no finish line. You're always going to be rediscovering something else about yourself. I am still trying to figure out who this lady is. I mean, I like who she's becoming, but I don't know her yet. Okay. So it's always a moving needle. Like there's never going to be a time where you're like, okay, I got it now. I figured everything out, especially with law school. All through it, up until the end, I felt like I knew about 40% of what I was doing. You know what I mean? So don't wait for there to be a time. If there's any law student, 1L, 2L, or 3L who tells you that they've got it figured out, they're lying to you. It's just figuring out how to deal with certain things, but you never really figure it out. I hope that's not freaking anyone out, but it's true. So the best you can do is just come up with tools that can help you to, sustain and stay the course. So like we were talking about, it's important to lean in on your support system, both in school and outside of school. Nurture those relationships, maintain those relationships. They will be important when you're in school, when you're out of school, especially for bar prep. They will keep you sane. And then when you're in practice as well. I really believe in manifesting things. So every year I suggest, or even twice or 3 times a year, do a vision board. What do I want for this quarter? What do I want for this half of the year? What do I want out of the whole year? I'm lazy, so I do one at the beginning of the year. I invite my friends over. We have wine and, cheese, and we talk about what we want for the year. I leave myself a little note that I read at the end of the year to see what I accomplished and to tell myself to be nice to myself if I didn't achieve everything on there, because it's aspirational. But I think that's really important for you to do. Think of what you do want out of this world and don't try to focus on so much on what you don't want. That's a lesson I really learned from my mother-in-law that I take with me through life. And then the last thing is, you need a mentor for every facet of your life, especially if you're a first generation law student or lawyer. I have a mentor for everything. When I tell you everything, down to the clothes I wear to work, like everything. There's always going to be somebody who speaks to some part of what you're dealing with in law school and in your career in general. So seek mentors. Don't be afraid to ask questions and to, employ the advice of people who've been through this already, because why should you be forced to figure it out when other people have already figured it out? Lean on people and ask questions. So don't be afraid to stand in your light. Okay, sit and take up all the space in that seat that you have earned in that very small class at FIU Law and make the most of it. So yeah, that's my advice.
Tremaine was perfect. I have 2 little things to add. Give yourself grace.
Yes.
Because we're, in an environment where we're all type A, we're all perfectionists. We're just give yourself a little bit of grace and don't be afraid to grow, like Tremaine said, as a person. 36-year-old, I'm getting old. 36-year-old Charlene is different from 26-year-old Charlene when she first stepped foot on FIU's campus. And sometimes there are things where I'm thinking like, man, I'm far ahead on this in my career, but in my personal life, I'm not ahead on X, Y, and Z. But then I have to step back and give myself grace. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. There's so much more out there for me to do. And I think when you give yourself grace, then there comes this peace that you're always going to have. So that's all I would add.
I think those are spectacular contributions. As somebody who has, I joined the faculty in 2007, so again, that means I'm coming up on 14 years in August being at FIU. The thing that I want most for all of you is for you to be happy lawyers. And that makes me extra delighted to have 2 grads coming back and speaking with us, because it suggests to me like we are producing happy lawyers. What made me sad when I went to my 5-year reunion after law school was how many people were just down on the practice of law and regretting their decision to go to law school when I was, I was much poorer than they were financially, but I was much happier. And so I would say to you, you only get one life. If you leave law school and you are not happy in your job, then you need to quit your job and find another. And Tremaine is dead right. You should ask for mentors everywhere that you go, but make those real and genuine relationships, not what you can do for me, but find people who you really truly connect with, because that will give you confidence in the moment. It will give you a leg up, but it will also give you a connection and a true friend. And those things are priceless, and they will stay with you even if you go on to your next role. And gosh, I mean, Charlene, what is better than advice to tell people to give themselves grace, because we are very hard on ourselves, and we can be our own worst enemies. So I think, and isn't that really mindfulness? George Knox, who used to be a part of our faculty. And it makes me sad that you don't get the benefit of George. He used to start, you current students, he used to start out class with the meditation bowl, right? And he can carry it off. And he gave me advice one time. I don't even remember what had happened, but something happened in class and I wasn't happy about it. And I stopped in his office and I was like, George, this terrible thing just happened. No idea today what it was, but I was like, this terrible thing just happened. And he said, in the past, right? And I was like, but yes, but George, but just right before I walked into your, like, I haven't even gotten to my office yet, George. I stopped at your office first. And he goes, so this happened in the past? And he just kept asking my neurotic New York self this question until finally I had to concede it had happened in the past. And he said, okay, leave it there. I have said this to my children so many times. I have said this to other law professors. I have said it to friends. And I think it's part of that, giving yourself grace. It's part of that, you know, perfection does not exist. Don't be your own worst enemy and torment yourself over the errors that you made, right? They're in the past. Leave them there.
Wow, thank you guys so much, Charlene, Tremaine, Professor Fairlie. We've had such a rich conversation today. So thank you so much for taking the time to come speak with us today. And I hope that you will spread the word to other FIU network people to continue coming back and joining us for these Panther panels, because I really do see them as like super beneficial to the FIU community, and it's only going to continue getting better as we continue to also have really great speakers. So thank you once again for all of the wise words. We talked about so much, not only just finding meaning and purpose in the law, but mindfulness, relationships, network building, so much. So thank you guys so much again for coming and for your time today.
Thank you for organizing this for everyone, Stephanie. You're amazing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the compliment so much.
You are. You're amazing. Thank you for putting this together.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, y'all.
Thank you. Have a
You
good day, guys.
have a wonderful Monday.
Y'all take care.
Yeah.
You too.
All right. Bye.